everyone. Welcome to Pursuing Polaris, your official podcast of the Northstar SailGP Team. I'm Tom Ramshaw, your host, Team Canada grinder. And today we have none other than our wing trimmer, Paul Campbell-James, also known as CJ. Does anyone call you Paul?
My mum. And my wife, actually. My wife calls me Paul as well. But that's pretty much it.
CJ.
Yep.
How you doing?
Good. Yeah. It's nice being in Sydney. Nice and warm.
Yeah, as we're speaking, we're getting ready for our first practice day in Sydney. Some redemption after a not so great event we had in Auckland. How are you feeling for the regatta?
Yeah, it's nice to, it'd be nice to get a bit of bounce back. Obviously Auckland was super frustrating for all of us. So yeah, it'd be good to come out swinging in this one.
Yeah, I agree. The missing a day. Actually, the last time we missed a day, the only other time we missed a day was last year here in Sydney. So we're going to be going for redemption on last year and our last regatta.
Yeah, Team Canada hasn't got a great history in Sydney, has it? So we need to shake that and have a good one.
Nice. So on this podcast, I don't know if you've listened to the previous episodes.
Mate, you do a great job.
Oh, thank you. We're just trying to get to know everyone within the team, get to know their background, how they ended up here. So let's just dig straight into who is Paul Campbell-James? Where did he come from? How did he end up on the team? So yeah, tell me how you got going in sailing and how you ended up into the SailGP world.
How I got going in sailing. My old man went to the Olympics in '84 in a tornado. So
no way.
There's a bit of catamaran sailing in our blood. I was an Oppie sailor, sailed against a lot of the sailors here, really. Chris Draper, guys like that, growing up. And then moved into the 49er world. Actually raced against Billy a little bit in the 49er. We got a few top 10s, but never really. We were never number one in the UK. I then kind of rolled out the Olympic scene into Extreme 40s, which was kind of my big break into pro sailing, really. Ended up winning the Extreme 40s with the Omani team. So
you would have been, what were the Extreme 40s, you were a driver?
Yeah. Yes, I was helm. Yeah,
Nice.
I'd only known anything other than helming until I did my second America's Cup. Did the Extreme 40s with the Omani team. And then Luna Rossa was starting up again, having had a bit of a break from not doing the America's Cup. And because we just won the kind of only series in catamarans, and the America's Cup had just changed into catamarans, they called me. And my Omani team effectively moved over to Luna Rossa, and we started the America's Cup with those guys, which was the big break.
Yeah. Nice. So you kind of slotted into the right scenes at the right times. And so when America's Cup started being catamarans, you were already a catamaran specialist by this point?
I mean, I wouldn't even call myself a specialist, but the thing is, there weren't many people that were sailing catamarans at that time. The America's Cup had been in monohulls forever, and there was only really one pro catamaran circuit, which was the Extreme Series. And it just happened to be, as you say, right place, right time, just as the America's Cup changed into catamarans. So that all worked out really well. Then did Luna Rossa, did the America's Cup in Luna Rossa in those epic foiling 72s, which at the beginning of that campaign, nothing was foiling. We were, the rule was written to not foil, and then we got given this design from the Kiwis that was fully foiling, and we're like, holy moly, this is going to be pretty amazing. 72-foot boat. I think it was 10,000 times more righting moment than the Extreme 40 that we've been sailing. And there we were, given this weapon to go and test.
Was that a bit scary at the start when you were testing things out? Or
yeah, so I mean, the 72 was obviously the last boat that we had in that campaign. But what was the crazy bit is that we hadn't really done any foiling before then. And we're given this SL33 test boat, and then later on the AC45, and we've got to learn how to foil. So we're down in Auckland and learning how to sail this thing, and just we had no idea how to control the foils. We had no idea of the best designs, and you'd just be sailing along and the thing would just jump out the water. And you're then like, oh, well, maybe we need to change the rake, and how are we going to do that? And, learning all that stuff was wicked fun.
Yeah, I was going to say, you must have been loving it, because the crazier the day gets when we're out sailing together, you're having the most fun when everyone else is like a bit scared.
Yeah. They're the days I relish. Eh? They're the ones when I really enjoy, and the ones I really remember. But yeah, those days, early days of learning how to foil in SL33s and just getting faster and faster. You know, America's Cup had barely broken 15 knots at that point. You know, Extreme 40s didn't really go much more than 20, 25. And then we get this SL33, tiny little thing, 4 people on board. And we hit like 36 knots in this thing in the first winter that we were sailing. Just like no safety gear. I don't think we weren't even wearing life jackets. Some people weren't even wearing shoes, you know. And we'd just be
Those
going.
guys in their shorts and t-shirts,
Yeah, literally
sitting on the tramp doing 35 knots.
Yeah, and
wow,
totally out of control as well. So we had some massive wipeouts, and you know, had guys falling overboard. We had just had some pretty comical times learning how to do all that.
So in that campaign, I guess you guys didn't do as well in the America's Cup just because it was a little bit. Some of the other teams were a bit ahead on the development. Or?
Yeah, so I mean, Luna Rossa really targeted that one as a learning America's Cup. You know, we bought the design off the Kiwis, and we bought their first package of the design when they went on and built a second boat. So we very much had a second or first generation boat when everyone else was using their second. So, you know, we did all right. We were obviously foiling, so we beat Artemis, who weren't foiling. And then Oracle, you know, had that amazing comeback, and that was all pretty.
So then that you stayed in the America's Cup world and you transitioned away from driving, you became a wing trimmer.
Yeah.
And how was that? How was that in the early days of trimming the wing? Yeah.
So again, that was a bit of a development moment, but yeah, I basically finished the Luna Rossa campaign, and then there was a British team, and you know, someone said to me, because I had the option at that point to join Oracle, and someone said to me, you know, just imagine if the British won and you weren't involved. And you're like, God, you know what? That's so right. So yeah, and Ben was obviously always going to drive that campaign, and I kind of signed up as maybe a second helmsman, but really looking at the wing trimming role to sit next to Ben and, you know, learn that role. And yeah, another road of discovery, you know, working out how to trim wings. And yeah, I mean,
so how does that wing? Obviously, the AC50 of that campaign has turned into the F50 that we sail every day here.
Yeah.
How does that wing compare to the wing that we now use?
Yeah, so actually the wing that we used in the America's Cup and the wing that we used in the AC45s was again like a second generation one. We did loads of testing on early wings in the early days, and we had some crazy systems. We had even one that was an electrical system where we had like disc brakes and stuff on every level, and you could do loads of crazy stuff to this wing, but we capsized most of those and wrote most of those off and came to the design that obviously we have today, which is way better than the stuff we used even in the America's Cup.
Yeah.
The Cup was limited by, you know, the way you can control it. Some of the rules were real strict. Obviously SailGP makes their own rules. So, you know, the way that you set up these wings is literally just in a computer. You go boom, 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 and it goes to exactly the shape you want. Where those things back in the day, you had to spend hours tuning them and tensioning bits of wire and ropes and stuff like that. So it took forever, and it was a complete hassle.
Nice. Seems like a fun time though.
It was a good time, yeah. But actually the first wing we ever did was in the Luna Rossa campaign, and we built one for the SL33 for the little boat. And you know, this was all new territory, so I think the campaign spent like €1 million building this wing. Right, so we've got this wing in, and it's the second day out, and we're down in Sardinia. The boat is all branded up with Prada and everything, and we're kind of out there sailing, and big breeze comes in, so we're like, right, we just got to get this thing home. Anyway, we're sailing it home, and this big super yacht is like right in the way between us and home, and it's like 90-degree reach, and we're hanging on for dear life. Anyway, we go below this super yacht, get the big lull on the back of it, and then we get the gust on the backside and just lay it flat on its side right next to him. Anyway,
is the yacht moving or is it anchored?
The yacht's moving, right? And then we're just upwind of it because we kind of round up and then land. Anyway, the yacht's like, wow, this is pretty cool. There's a Prada branded catamaran that's just capsized in front of us. So this big super yacht turns towards us. Anyway, those catamarans go quite fast on their side, even going downwind. So our yacht then rotates down towards this super yacht, right? And crashes into the side of the super yacht, right? So our wings on the side, boat's on its side, wings out horizontally. Anyway, we crash into this super yacht, bang, bang, bang. And then the super yacht is towing a rib, right? So,
Oh, boy.
so the SL33 goes over the tow line, and this rib basically gets towed straight through this €1 million wing and destroys
And
it.
you said this was your second day out.
Second day out.
Oh.
Yeah. But it gets worse because our rib had broken down at this point. So we had no way of righting the boat. So Alistair, the wing trimmer that was sailing with me, he jumps into the rib that's just been towed through our wing, cuts the bow line, and we start up the engine,
The super yacht's rib.
the super yacht's rib, and we use the rib to pull the boat up, right? Right. But
So the people on the super yacht, they're just watching the shows. These guys stealing their rib.
Yeah.
And
But it gets worse, right? Because we pull the boat up, and because the SL33 wasn't designed to be foiling, we basically just cut a big hole in the bottom of it and placed the foils in. So it wasn't very watertight, right? So the boat starts sinking. One hull starts sinking. Anyway, so we pull the boat up right, and then one hull starts sinking, so it capsizes again. So we get a second rib out, which is Max, the boss of the campaign. And he comes and he hooks another line up to the underside of the beam, right? So we pull the boat upright, and the boat starts capsizing again. So he floors it to try and make sure it doesn't capsize. But in doing so, cheese wires through the whole underside of the hull that isn't sunk.
so the line
So the line basically just goes straight and
cut
just
the one good hull.
cut the one good hull in half. So we've got one hull sunk, one hull that's just been cut in half with a disintegrated wing above us. And we're like, this is a really bad day. Anyway, we get it back to the dock, and it just sinks on the dock. And we've basically ended up connecting the crane up to the boat on the bottom of the harbour and just lifting it out on the crane. I was like, I think we're going to have a bit of time off.
Oh, man.
Yeah, it was not a good day.
So those are early days. That would have been, 15 years ago or maybe?
Yeah, that would have been like 2012, 2011. So yeah,
Nice.
a while ago. But yeah, that was how loose it was.
So
at the beginning.
the safety standards and protocols for capsize are a lot more. We
Yeah.
figured them out with all these things that have gone
Exactly.
wrong. So
They're
those situations
a
don't quite
lot
happen
more
again.
refined nowadays, and yeah, I mean now we have helmets and life jackets and
All sorts of
all
safety.
sorts of safety stuff, and actually the tethers that keep us on board the boats are pretty awesome as well. Because
So when those came out, a lot of people were pretty skeptical of it being tied on.
Yeah,
Or was it already
and-
conversation that the sailors wanted?
no, it wasn't at all, and that was very much a SailGP thing. Yeah, even when we did the America's Cup in these boats, people were falling overboard. And we were kind of under the impression that you would never want to be tied onto a boat, even in case it capsized. But actually, the system we've got, it's pretty quick release, and it's saved a lot of people a lot of time from going overboard. And obviously, going overboard with 12 boats going 50 knots.
Yeah,
Could be pretty
going over
dramatic.
the front and foils behind.
Exactly.
Pretty terrifying.
Exactly.
Certainly, I feel I've only known sailing on foiling catamarans tethered in.
Yeah.
So I would be very uncomfortable without it.
Right.
Well,
I'm
that's
the
not
same.
true. I guess the GC32
Yeah.
was
Well, that's pretty loose.
yeah, it's pretty loose. But
Yeah.
actually, I remember having first sailed the F50, being tethered in and going back to the GC32, being like, "Whoa!" It's like I could just go overboard
Yeah,
while
yeah.
I'm like turning this
Right.
winch.
I feel naked now without the tether on.
Yeah.
It's really noticeable that you rely on this stuff after a while.
Yeah, so after the America's Cup and SailGP started up, were you've been on quite a few teams, so were you straight into a team or
No, so
what
I
was your
missed
transition?
the first event, first two events actually. The first one was here in Sydney, and there was only 5 or 6 teams, and Phil Robertson had the Chinese team. Anyway, they were coming last after the first few events, and so I ended up signing up as the coach for the New York event, which I think was event number 3 of. I think there's only 5 events that year. And I ended up coaching New York, and then ended up swapping in as wing trimmer for Cows. And I don't know if you remember Cows season 1, but it was like, again, super loose, like wind against tide off Cows Green, which anyone that's been down there knows it's like the shortest, steepest chop ever.
Yeah.
Right. So there was, loads of capsizes that day, and it was another full-on survival day, which, yeah, again, was right up my street, but it was not really perfect for my first day in an F50 or a modified F50. But yeah, so joined Phil in the Canadian team. We actually ended up coming third that season, which was great from being
on the Chinese team.
on the Chinese team. And then we went down to New Zealand. Phil, me, and James Babowski, who was the Chinese flight controller, with the Chinese lads, and we were testing out this new wing because that wing was coming online that year, because we used that first season, everyone used basically the old America's Cup wings, which were all pretty different to each other. So yeah, they brought out this one design wing, which we all tested down in New Zealand. But while we were down there, the Chinese team got dropped and replaced with the Spanish team.
Yeah.
So the issue with that was that Phil, myself, and James couldn't sail together because they were only allowed one non-Spanish person on board. So Phil obviously stayed, and I moved back into the coaching role, and we then ended up coaching Flo and Diego and everyone up to speed.
Yeah.
For then that second season when we went to Sydney. But then COVID happened. I actually joined the French team just as COVID happened. So I was actually going to sail again in the French team. So this is my now third team. But I never ended up sailing for the French because by the end of COVID and, that season got all delayed, Jimmy had started his team. And Spittle had started up the American team, and he was like, do you want to come do it? And I'm like, I'm not going to say no to Jimmy.
Yeah.
So ended up sailing with Jimmy. So that's fourth. And then obviously the American team got bought halfway through last season.
So you sailed with them for...
I did 2.5 years.
2.5 years.
Yeah. But then obviously that team got bought by what is now the American team. I didn't particularly want to sail with Taylor. And they had some very different priorities to what I was used to. They were very worried about the commercial side and not very worried about the performance side, which I thought was going to be super frustrating.
Yeah.
So yeah, ended up joining you guys, which was awesome. And it was timed very well with Chris kind of hanging up his boots, and there being a spot open, and I could then obviously sail with Phil again, which was fun because I really enjoyed doing that in season 1. Yeah. Well, then I did a little stint with the Brazilians this winter. Helping those guys get up to speed. So yeah, I got six different hats of SailGP Team.
Nice. You collect them? You have them hanging on a wall somewhere?
I don't know. That'd be good.
In the Campbell-James Museum.
Yeah.
Nice. So how are you feeling for this season? Obviously our team's changed a bit. We haven't had the best start.
Yeah.
What's your forecast and what do you think?
Well, we're going to get there, aren't we? It's always hard with a new helmsman and a new, I want to say a new team, but obviously everyone else is the same. But it's that gelling around the helmsman is the massive part of it. So yeah, a couple of disappointing events to start the season, but we'll get there. So we'll be in good shape. Giles is obviously a massive talent, and he's won events before with the British, and we've won events before without him. So we'll be fine. We've just got to find our feet.
You obviously on the team. The communication role between you being the wing trimmer and the driver is super important. So I guess that's something we're still working on and you're feeling pretty good about, I guess.
Yeah. No, I think Giles did...
you would have sailed with him on that American
so he did
Cup
he did Luna Rossa as well, actually. He did Luna Rossa at the very end. And then he did the BAR Cup with me in Bermuda. But he was a forward-facing grinder, which was kind of a strategist role at that point. So he wasn't driving, but he was still involved in the kind of tactical loop and the conversation. So yeah, I've had a lot of time with Giles in a boat, not so much with him driving. But I've got a great relationship with him, and we'll be in good shape. But it's obviously, as you know, it's pretty different sailing with Phil. He's a very different character. And it requires a lot more information and a lot different information. So just kind of working all that out at the moment, which is not the easiest thing to do in a season like this when you're limited in sailing time. And tomorrow's a perfect example. If we're lucky, we might get an hour and a half sailing, and of which we've got to do 4 races in that time. So training time is very limited. So it's hard to get up to speed, but we've got all the right ingredients in place.
Without all the training time, it's like we do the video.
Yeah.
We talk about getting better at sailing, and then you don't get to practice it. So I asked this question, if you could change one thing about SailGP, 1 day sailing.
Twice as many days sailing and twice as many hours when we do go sailing.
Answer.
Yeah, 100%. I love these boats. There's literally no better boat in the world. They're awesome. Just sailing the thing in a straight line is completely badass.
Yeah.
And the more we can do it, the better. And the more comfortable we can get as a team sailing when it's super windy, the better the boat even feels after that. So, yeah.
Do you have a second favorite boat that outside of...
Super foiler.
Super foiler.
I know you love these things as well, but
Well, I've only seen videos of them. I've never even seen one live.
again, another extremely loose boat that
So
was
for
great
those
fun.
who don't remember or know the super foiler, do you want to explain it a
So
bit?
the super foiler was like it was some Australian design foiling 3-person trapeze. I want to say dinghy, but it was kind of barely a dinghy. It was a trimaran.
Trimaran.
So it's like one massive long center hull and then 2 kind of half-length outer hulls. And we did a circuit around Australia, and it was kind of a classic Australian circuit where they really built the drama and they liked everyone swearing at each other, and it was on TV cameras and there was betting and it was hilarious. But the boats were just such hard work to sail. Like upwind, it was awesome, but you got to the top mark, and I remember doing some bearways where I had Kinley Fowler on, who's in the Australian team at the moment. And we did one bearway where we heeled a little bit to windward and he kind of pushed off. And he was basically like 20 foot away from the boat on the outside of the turn as we're coming through the bearway.
So the centripetal force of the turn
It just kept on
sucked him
going.
off
It's
the
like
boat.
right outside. Anyway, he then eventually like manages to get back on board. But we had another few times where you have a stuff and everyone just goes flying around the forestay. And one time I managed to stay on, and Ed Powis, who was sailing for me at that time, went right round the forestay, came back in, landed on the leeward side, unclipped his trapeze harness, threw it round the back, threw it back round the front, ran across, caught it again, and we carried on. It's just like so many moments like that.
So it was a tough boat to sail.
Yeah.
Tough boat to stay healthy. Probably a lot of injuries.
Yeah, and Phil was the classic. Phil Robertson had he had a boat called Black Star, but everyone called it the Death Star because he injured like 7 guys in 3 events. You know, he had like 1 broken leg, 2 people did their knees in, and eventually it got to the stage where no one would go sailing with him because he kept injuring everyone.
So if these boats make a comeback,
I'm in 100%.
yeah,
You with me?
I'll join you.
Yeah,
I don't know.
nice.
I haven't done a lot of trapeze sailing, but I think I can figure it out.
Yeah, hike it down, mate. You'll be right.
Yeah. Okay. So just lean off the side, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But I don't know if we'll be allowed to sail them from the sounds of it with all the injuries happening.
Yeah.
So back to SailGP a bit. The last event, obviously, we missed a day with an injury of our flight controller Billy, but everyone else got to race 7 and 8 races. What do you think?
Yeah, it's great. I mean, the way the Extreme Series did it back in the day, we did 4 days racing, but we just did tons of racing, right? And there's the randomness involved in sailing, and the randomness involved in sailing in a tiny little venue like we do in these classes. But the more races, the more the cream rises to the top, and there's not that randomness. So I'm all for as much racing as we can fit in. And if we could even extend the TV window, I'd want to chuck more races in there. But yeah, definitely changing from 3 races to 4 a day is a plus. But it does change a little bit what we should focus on in training and what we need to be good at, because those races are slightly shorter, which then puts the focus more on the starts, a bit more focus on the boat handling. It comes back to communication, all that stuff. So yeah, there's a bit of different stuff to focus on. It's a lot less about just straight line speed and a lot more about getting around the course cleanly and getting out in front at the beginning.
Yeah, for me, the more sailing, the better. More sailing fitting into the small TV window, great. Make it bigger, even more races. Exactly. Maybe make it 10.
If they said 10 races a day, I'd be stoked.
Yeah. I do. Do you like the 10 to 12 minute races, or do you think we should race?
Do you know what? I don't actually.
Shorter?
I don't mind the short races. I think it's quite cool. I've never really been into offshore sailing because the best bits of the race for me are the starts, the mark roundings, and the boat on boat situations. Which, after the first 10 minutes, you might get a few more, but certainly in that first downwind and first bottom mark and first upwind is where most of the action happens. So let's just keep doing that.
Yeah, more starts, more races, better
more
sailing.
action.
Yeah, better action,
better TV.
Yeah. I think the TV window's got to get bigger. You got all the main sports I watch in Canada and North America are, they might be an hour game, but the whole window of watching it's like 3 hours. Maybe it's the same for football and
it is. Football and rugby
So
football's 90 minutes, but it's
I think the sailing fans got a 3 hour attention span. They could watch 3 hours of us just loosely going around the course, race after race.
Definitely, the more the better.
Yeah. So this weekend, I think they're scheduling 4 races a day again. So
that's good.
Should be pretty fun. This will probably come out after they're done, so we can assume Well,
Assume we've won.
yeah. Let's just assume we have. I said that on another one, and we hadn't won.
And
that
we came in
regardless.
second last.
So we might look pretty silly right now.
Oh, whatever.
No, but we're feeling better. I think we'll get some things together and have an improvement on Auckland for sure.
Yeah, and Sydney's always good. All the racing's always tricky.
Yeah,
but it's always badass, isn't it?
So would you say this is one of your favorite venues?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, because it brings its own challenges. The frustrating thing for me about Sydney is we don't get a huge amount of time on the race course because of the situation, the geographical situation, and the traffic and everything. But
the harbor's super busy.
Yeah.
Just having 12 F-50s foiling around with all the ferries going by.
Seaplanes. We got told off last year for getting in the way of a seaplane.
Yeah, that's a bit sketchy, no?
Yeah.
I don't even remember that.
Yeah.
I probably didn't even notice. And
well, we certainly got in a lot of trouble for it.
Yeah. And then, so if we get what is it, southeasterly, then we have an island in the middle of the course, which they've
had that the last 2 years. The last two events we've had the island in the middle, which is again brings another element to it. But I love it. I think it's cool. I think the more randomness like that, the better. The more ups and downs and snakes and ladders just makes the TV product better. So yeah, the more the better.
I remember when we last year in Christchurch, it was an epic day. Yeah. It was your favorite day ever, you said, at the time. We got in 3 crashes in the matter of 3 minutes and had a good day. We were in the final. I think we ended up 3rd.
Yeah.
But that was your favorite day of sailing ever. So it's safe to say, as I said before, that you like the chaos and whatnot.
Yep.
So I know there was a highlight reel from the early promotional videos of SailGP where there was a big wipeout and it was you and you broke your leg? Tell us about that.
Yeah, that was very early days of this new wing. So the new wing came about and it's probably only the first or second time, maybe second time that we'd used the small one, the 18-meter wing. And there's this little thing with that wing where there's a certain amount of area in front of where it rotates and a certain amount behind. And when you twist the wing too much, the area in front of that ball becomes more than the area behind it. And the wing will actually sheet itself on and heel the boat over despite the fact you're doing everything to let it out. The rope just goes slack. Now, the way to solve that is to close the twist so that the load moves aft and it goes out. But it's quite counterintuitive. Anyway, coming down to the first leeward mark in one of the practice race days. And we round up at the bottom, and this happens. We're doing 48 knots going into the bottom mark. We do a round up. Wing sheet goes slack and the thing starts sheeting on. So I then, and this was my biggest error, I then sorted it out. I closed the twist, eased the sheet, but in closing the twist, the boat then heels over for a short period of time before the wing goes out. And in that moment that I closed the twist to make the thing go out, the boat heeled over really aggressively and it just shot me out of the cockpit. I then fell down and hit the outside of my leg on the center pod, on the top of the center pod. And unbeknown to me, ended up breaking my fibula, like the little bone in your leg. There's 2 bones. Yeah. One takes about 90% and one takes about 10%, but it stops all the rotation.
Yeah.
Anyway, I broke that, but I didn't realize. So I kind of climbed back up to the top of the hull. This was at last bottom mark as it's only a 2-lap race, a 1-lap race. Anyway, ended up doing 4 more foiling tacks on the way up to the top and like basically limping and hopping across the boat. And then the final one, I actually didn't even make it. And it was a port tack situation where I didn't make it and Jimmy just had to turn the boat while I was center of the tramp, like with a broken leg. Anyway, ended up finishing the race, coming through the finish line, and Jimmy's like, "You're all right. You look like you got a bit of a limp on." I'm like, No, I'm not all right. Anyway, so jumped out into the medic boat. The medic immediately was like, "Oh, well, you've broken your fibula." I was like, "Oh, that's not right. I just walked on it. I've just finished the race." He's like, "No." Anyway, went to the hospital, got the x-ray. It was as clear as mud, like clean break, straight through it. But at the time, we were kind of right on the edge of whether we were going to be in the top 3 for the season. And obviously, it's a massive thing being in the top 3 because then you get to race for $1 million at the end of the year.
Yeah.
At that time, it was $1 million. Now it's $2 million. So anyway, 18 days to the next regatta. So I flew out that night. I went to the hospital, flew out that night. got into the.
Did you didn't miss any of the regatta? That was
No,
the
so
last
that
race?
was on the practice race. So I missed those 2 days, next 2
Okay.
days. So we flew Jason Saunders in, and he did those 2 days for the Americans.
Yeah.
And ironically, it was really light winds, and they kind of drifted around, so would have been pretty easy. But it was actually 21 days at that point till the next regatta, and the next one was down in Saint-Tropez. So I went to the hospital, and I walked into the hospital in England, and the guy was like, "Have you just flown back from Denmark?" Because at SailGP, and he knew he was a sailor,
Oh, no
and he
way.
knew about SailGP, and he didn't know me, but he'd heard about the breaking leg thing,
Yeah.
and he was like, "Oh man, I've just been watching the event last weekend," and this was like the Saturday. No, this was the Sunday. Anyway, I'd seen a few different doctors. This guy eventually came in, and all the doctors said, you're going to be in a cast for 6 weeks. You're going to be, you're not going to be sailing for a while. Anyway, this guy, I said to him, like, I want to sail in an event at that point it was 20 days time. And he's like, I mean, I could do it, but it's not going to be pretty. Anyway, so he ends up the next Monday morning, he fits me in at 7:30 before he even starts work. He didn't have an anaesthetist, so he basically just, like, normally you'd be put under for this surgery, but he just kind of injected my leg and gave me a little anesthetic around my leg. He then basically cut my leg open, put a plate in, drilled it all back together while I'm videoing.
No way.
Yeah,
I got to see this video.
yeah, I'll show you later. It's pretty minging. Anyway, I then have a cast for like 10 days, flew down to Saint-Tropez, and ended up the practice day in Saint-Tropez on the Friday, which was 18 days after the operation, was like big waves. Not that windy, but just like a real big rolling swell.
That's tougher than
And it
windy
was-
and flat.
It was really hard. And we actually had Taylor Canfield doing flight for that event because Rome Kirby was getting married the weekend after. So Taylor came in, and I mean, we were just crashing all the time. And I was like, I've got to get off. So I ended up just getting off and not doing the practice day. And the guys had Jason again to do the practice racing. But then for race day, it was a bit lighter, and we ended up actually coming second or third in the regatta.
Nice.
This
This was season 2, no?
was season 2, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I basically I'd come down in the morning 5 minutes before we were ready to go. I'd just put my stuff on, get on the boat,
the Rockstar
full
program.
rock star, and then get off and go straight back to the hotel and elevate my leg, and just with non-stop painkillers for that whole event. But
Oh yeah.
it was cool, but the issue was actually the leg never really healed, and because I was walking on it, the bone was never getting better, and all the load was just running through this plate. So it took me a good kind of 6 to 8 months before the bone actually healed itself.
Oh.
So I just limped
Yeah,
around.
that's kind of not surprising. It like the broken bone is pretty much 4 to 6 weeks every time.
Exactly. But I got to the stage where he's like, you've put so much load through this plate that the plate and the screws are about to snap. Like, you've got to stop. And then we got down to Sydney for the event down here, and it's kind of on the back of COVID. And they basically said, right, you've got to stay in your room for 10 days because we were on isolation or whatever it is when we landed here.
Oh yeah.
So I actually just stayed in the room for that 10 days, and I got back from there, had another x-ray, and they're like, oh, it's suddenly started to fix itself because I just sat in the room for 10 days.
That's convenient.
Yeah, it was convenient. But the plate was giving me a load of grief, so I ended up flying out to America and getting the plate taken out, and then it was all good. And now I wouldn't even know which leg it is. I'm pointing at this leg like it was this leg, but actually it is actually this leg.
Oh yeah, there's a big scar there.
Yeah, let's go down the bottom.
Wow.
But yeah, it was quite a feat to be able to get back in after the 18 days after the operation. But
So when we have these really windy days, you're not scared anymore.
no, I don't really get scared.
Not scared,
but
but like a little nervous, a little like extra adrenaline.
The one thing I do nowadays is, like if we're having a moment, I'll just let go and hold on. Like, I won't try and save the boat.
Yeah.
Sorry about that, but I do.
We're all
kind
doing
of
the same thing.
give up and just duck,
Yeah.
which has worked out well in the last 3 capsizes I've had since then.
Yeah, I've never actually been in a capsize yet. So ever. I never will.
Really?
No.
What, in a cat ever?
No, in the F50.
In the F50?
Yeah, well, we did have in Chicago our first season.
Oh yeah, you
We
capsized
had a half
onto the rib.
capsize. While we were at the rib, a huge wind shift off the city capsized the boat onto the rib, and I got pinned between the tramp and the T-top
No way.
of the rib, and I was like, should I cut the tramp? And I shuffled my way out pretty quickly, and then we just inverted the wing, and it righted itself as the wind shifted back. So
Yeah, nice.
we never had to hook up the righting lines or anything. So it's like kind of
You already had the
a capsize, not really a capsize.
Yeah.
I don't even know if the top of the wing touched the water or it was just resting on the rib.
Yeah, nice.
So it was a bit chaotic, but it all happened pretty quick.
And you continued racing, I imagine.
Actually, we had to cut the lower, and it was a training day.
Oh, yeah.
And I think we just went in because...
Can't race without a lower.
Yeah, we were a brand new team, can't race without a lower, and, well, we could have got a new strop.
Yeah, did you cut the strop or you cut the lower?
strop.
Oh, you cut it. Yeah, okay.
And, but we wanted to check everything was okay. We're a new team. It was a little scary for a bunch of people who hadn't experienced anything like that.
Yeah, yeah.
Obviously, we had... Nothing's as scary as what we experienced later in the events when our wing crashed 2 times ago when we were here in Sydney. But
yeah, that was a day, wasn't it? My God, watching that from the outside was phenomenal. Like how no one got injured there was mind-boggling.
Yeah, it was so much of adrenaline, but then you're just like, all the team got together. None of us we were all in our sailing equipment. So we went back to the hotel. None of us had our bags, phones, anything. And we're all just there together, just like, oh my God.
Buzzing.
And we thought the team was done. Like, that was the end of it. And then the next day, they're like, no, we'll get everything back together. And we were at the next event, and we won the next event.
Yeah, you did, yeah.
It's like,
that was a story, wasn't it?
It was, quite an emotional month, really. It was a pretty crazy situation, but
yeah.
We haven't had any crazy situations on the water. That's pretty much it. So,
well, apart from New Zealand this time around, or New Zealand the last time around. Sorry.
Yeah.
When,
yeah, that's true. But we just got out of there.
Yeah, we had
3 crashes.
Very near.
We were not in the wrong
disaster.
in any of the crashes.
Yeah.
And other boats got written off.
Yeah.
And we were fine.
Yeah.
And we had a great day.
Yeah, we did.
So you loved it.
I did love it. But we had a lot of injuries that day. I remember walking in after it, and Phil and I were there, like bubbling away, like super happy. And then there's Annie who's limping. You had broken ribs. Billy had a broken finger. Jake was like super quiet. Jerice had done his knee, and it was like the Walking Dead in front of us, just all all hobbling along. That wasn't as good as we thought.
I got hit by the wall of water, and
your ribs snap a handle off.
Yeah, the handle broke off, everything, and the wind got knocked out of me. So in the comms, looking back on it, I'm like,
Yeah, I literally thought
when I caught my breath, I was like, I think I'm okay. But I had to get x-rays on my back, and my ribs were fine. It was like my back was a bit sore, but it was all
toughed
fine.
out the final there, didn't you?
Yeah, the adrenaline got me through it, and then I stiffened up a bit. The plane was a bit uncomfortable, but that's what it is. But yeah, that was a fun day. I agree with that. Christchurch was great. Unfortunately, the dolphin situation.
Yeah. Well, we went from like the worst day in SailGP history, where we had this perfect wind, massive crowd, dolphins jump up and down, and we can't sail, and then the best day in SailGP history when
the dolphins went away.
The dolphins happened to leave, and we had this amazing day. But I'd argue that actually the more recent day in Auckland was probably up there with some of the best sailing as well. Unfortunately,
I heard other interviews that day we didn't sail was the best day they'd ever sailed.
Which makes it so much worse, doesn't it?
Yeah, it was hard to.
I couldn't watch it. I couldn't watch the footage.
Yeah, we obviously go home and watch some of the other teams and look at their data and over the video. And I was watching it, and it was a bit painful to watch. And I guess
I watched the onboard footage so you could see what people are doing, but I couldn't watch the helicopter. I couldn't watch the broadcast. It was too painful.
Yeah. Well, we'll get redemption.
Yeah.
Got a lot of events in front of us. You got any particular events you're looking forward to the most?
Portsmouth will be good. It's 15 minutes from my house.
Yeah.
All my family and friends will be there, which will be awesome. Hopefully you guys can all come around for a barbecue.
Oh, that'll be fun.
Yeah. And so that'll be really fun. What else? Halifax was amazing last year.
Yeah.
Looking forward to going back to Canada in 2026. Unfortunately, not this year, but yeah, Portsmouth this year will be my favourite event, I think, and then followed by this one. This one's going to be epic.
Yeah. What about San Francisco? Is that one of your favorites as well? Or
Yeah, San Fran's always good. San Fran's always cool, right? But yeah, I like the new venues. Not that this is a new venue, but yeah, San Fran will be good as well. San Fran.
have you a new one on the calendar that'll be interesting is going to Rio? Have you ever been to South America or
No,
anywhere?
never been to South America or Central America. Mate, I got to visit your house, but
Yeah.
yeah, Rio's going to be amazing. I have no idea what to expect.
Yeah.
I've heard so many stories, but I just can't imagine what it's like. I mean, you're pumped, right?
Yeah, well, I spent some time there leading up to the Olympics.
Yeah, of course.
And
We've had some success
there. Good, really good venue for sailing. Really,
Yeah.
The bay is beautiful. You know the geography there. This massive city built on this beautiful geography on the ocean. It's pretty amazing. Cool spot. So I'm looking forward to that one.
Did Annie do the Olympics there too?
Annie did the Olympics.
Annie, you and Giles won.
Yeah.
It's good.
Yeah.
It's good pedigree.
Yeah, so there's been some sailing research
Yeah,
done
yeah.
on the course. Not
good.
exactly sure where the course is, but I haven't looked that deeply into it, but we'll get there. Yeah, and then what do you think about the final is in Abu Dhabi? We didn't have the best event there with super light wind last time. Hopefully it'll be a bit better. What do you think of these new jet propulsion systems that are possibly, well, they're getting tested, they're getting developed. What's your thoughts?
I mean, we've got to do something to make the light wind venues better, right?
Yeah.
Because we're going to go there because there's loads of money there. So we're going to go there, which is not good for the sport of sailing. But the some of those innovations that are coming, they can't hurt, right? And the purist in me thinks that we shouldn't be having a jet propelled engine off the bottom, but the sports fan in me kind of thinks, what happens if you get extra boost when your fans call in, or you get extra boost if you like do something extreme or go near the adrenaline lounge or something like that. I mean, that'd be pretty fun.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of turns into Mario Kart, but kind of already is.
Yeah, it's true. That would be hilarious if there was a fan vote of who they get to.
Like just full Formula E style.
Yeah.
You go through the pit lane, get some extra.
Yeah, it'll be cool, like tactics of when to use it, but well, it'll also just depend on how it works. So we'll see.
Yeah, it will, and it's going to add a lot of weight to the boat, which obviously hinders.
What about if for penalties, you just change something on the boat, like changing the rudder diff or something, or
for the whole race?
Yeah,
cool, yeah.
You get a penalty,
but then if you get a penalty,
and then you go slow.
If you get a penalty at the end, it's going to be hard, isn't it? But maybe that just means you take risk at the end, which would be quite fun. But I always had this thing where, going back to Mario Kart, like what if the leader, because we use 7.5 degrees of diff, what if the leader gets 0, second gets 1, then it goes down the list, and everyone at the back still keeps the maximum 7.5 degrees of diff.
So as you climb up the ladder line,
and
your number switches from 3 to 2,
based on
suddenly you lose your
based on your mark roundings.
Through
the gate, that's your position set. So then you have to, if you're leading, you have to struggle the whole way upwind with no diff, and everyone's catching you up, and then everyone will be at the buoys at the same time, and then you swap around when you get to the next gate mark. I mean, that'd be awesome. Let's proper Mario Kart where the guy behind is always faster than the guy in front.
I like that.
Always just finishes.
I think you could evolve the racing so you have like a race that's called, the Mario Kart race or whatever. Think of a better name, and then later some sort of pursuit race, and then a normal fleet race, and then a geographic race where it's just around some local island and back. All the points add up, and whoever's good at certain races
is the winner.
Yeah.
Back in the AC World Series at the beginning, they had this 500-meter course, and you could start at any point within a 10-minute window. And it was the person that did the course the fastest, and they obviously worked out your average speed. And they called it the Doritos 500, which it wasn't sponsored by Doritos, but it sounded very NASCAR-y.
Yeah.
But we could do a bit of that, bit of speed running.
Yeah, I would like that. A super long reach speed course.
And you just have to push. The person that gets the top speed wins. That'd be sick.
That'd be cool. There could be lots of little things to add points throughout the weekend.
Yeah.
We gotta get. I have heard the critique from sailors that I've sailed with on other boats that it gets a little bit. They're SailGP fans as well as sailors, but that it gets a bit repetitive, being that it's the same kind of racing every time.
Yeah.
And if you're obviously a super fan, you're super excited no matter what. But
Mixing it
just
up.
being a sailing fan, you might want to see some variety. So
Yeah,
could be fun as sailors, fun as spectators.
Chuck some stuff at us. Let's go.
Hopefully, maybe Russell listens to this podcast and he can.
I'm sure he would, mate.
And he can
tunes in to see you every week.
Yeah, and all my opinions end up from this podcast end up in the.
Yeah, you should put a patent on it.
They get all their new ideas from here.
Yeah,
we'll see.
But the new T4s will be interesting as well. You know,
Lightwind T4s.
Lightwind, seen some prototypes of those, and they look massive. So yeah, that would be pretty interesting seeing how those go and how far up the range we can take them. And you know, actually doing the T4 testing on these, as you know, like the big foils were actually pretty fast because you can end up pierce them loads, and we actually found that the big foils were faster than the small ones because the small ones there's too much load going around them. And then they end up cavitating early. Yeah. So actually, the big ones were better than the small ones.
Yeah, I remember when we did. I think it was in Bermuda. We were testing, and we had a big one on one side, a small one on the other, and we were doing a bit better on the big one.
Better upwind, better downwind.
Yeah, that was fun. That was a cool day.
Yeah,
Bermuda's always good. That's sad that that's not on the calendar.
Yeah, hopefully next year. But yeah, Bermuda's one. The best reason to go to Bermuda though is that there's no one like on the water there. So you end up just getting tons of sailing time, and as we
a lot of space,
as we touched on earlier, time in these boats is the funnest thing. So yeah, that's the good thing about Bermuda.
One thing that's tough for me is like when we launch the boat and they're sitting on the mooring. It's like we could just be sailing those things.
Well, he's sitting on the mooring.
We could be sailing for 5 hours,
and the crowd's in the stands. Like, just let us go. Well, let's go and put on the show.
Yeah, the safety committee needs to realize it'll be safer if we get more time sailing.
Exactly.
So that's what we should lobby for.
Exactly. If we go into the racing a bit too green, we're gonna have a problem.
And another thing is like your job very specialized, Billy's job very specialized, the driver of course as well. When obviously we saw Billy get injured and couldn't sail.
Yeah.
And because we have so little time in the boats, we're not able to have someone who could safely take the boat around the course in 25 plus knots. And that would solve that problem too. You have one less boat on the race course because of the situation.
Yeah. It's massively. It would help the talent development. It would help the female athlete program because you could put them into different roles. You know, it would help on everything. And yeah, more time is good.
More guys competing for your job.
Yeah, that's a negative. Yeah, yeah, we're in quite a niche as wing trimmers because there's no real other boats that you can sail with a wing.
Yeah.
Where obviously with drivers we've had a little bit more driver rotation because the boats are boats at the end of the day, and there's a lot of people that can drive boats fast.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's not many people that wing trim.
Yeah, the wing trim seems pretty specialized role. That's I guess. There's a lot of mainsail trimmers out there, but it's not really the same.
Yeah, very different. And you saw that with the new teams coming in this season, you know, really, really getting their checkbooks out to try and get an experienced wing trimmer because there just aren't many around. Yeah,
we'll see. Anyway, CJ, thanks a lot for coming on. You. I'm sure the fans will love getting to know you a bit better. And best of luck this weekend.
Likewise.
Thank you.